Hello, today's video is how to replace the hard disk in this Vostro 15 3568 laptop. So on the label on the underside it just says Vostro 15 and then it doesn't really have 3568 on the underside, but it does say 45173 SDPP I 2016 and then 5100. But putting in the service tag into the Dell website says that it is a Vostro 15 3568. So first thing I'm going to do is undo all the screws on the underside of the machine. Well, also first thing, take out the battery. Then undo all the screws. I'm going to start with the CD drive, which is a small screw, so make sure you keep that separate. The CD drive doesn't want to come out, so rather than forcing it and maybe breaking the bezel, I'll leave that in there for the moment, but at some point when this will need to come out anyway, because the whole underside of the laptop will come off anyway. So if you've seen one of my videos before, I tend to keep the screws in a little map of how the machine is, so that it's easy to remember where they go when you want to put them back. Which is especially important on machines which have different size screws in different positions. It looks like Dell didn't screw a lot of these in particularly tight. That one was fairly loose, that one was loose, that one was definitely fairly loose. And they are also different size screws, so these ones along here are different to these ones around the edge. So definitely keep track of where the screws came from. Pretty sure that's every single screw that I can see. So let me see whether this CD drive wants to come out. There we go. And that was good to do that, because there are 3 screws hidden along here. And remove those as well. And I have a helper. So now I've undone all of those screws, I'm going to open the machine up, as in the screen, and remove the keyboard. So using a thin spudger, which we'll also use again later, I'm I'm going to, there's a clip there, there. So basically one there, one there, one there, one there, and one there. We should now be able to gently pop the keyboard out. So that's all these clips undone, and now pull it up towards the screen, and these little tabs pull out from underneath. And I'll see whether I can get this well on video. This ribbon cable comes out by hinging the black bit of plastic here upwards like that. So that's hinged that up, and now we can just gently lift this, make sure that is undone. Yep, it is. This blue connector should just gently, there we go, gently lift out, and that's the keyboard is now free. There's more screws to undo here, so we've got, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws that I can see. And just for good measure, because I don't yet know whether this optical drive connector is connected or is mounted on the underside cover that we're going to take off, I will undo this connector just in case, because I'd rather do that and then have to put it back in than potentially leave it connected and damage that connector, so or that ribbon if I then try and take the cover off. So same kind of thing with this one, except it hinges that way. Lift up that black plastic tab, and that comes undone. You can now close the lid of the machine and turn it back over. This is where we go back to the thin knife. Try not to use a screwdriver for this, because you will end up with gouge marks along the plastic edges. One thing, if you're in a fix, you could possibly use is a plastic credit card or store card, and go outside on a brick wall or the floor and scrape it along the ground on both sides to wear down the edge of the card to make it a thin edge, and then that will allow you to fit it down the side of this machine and open up the case. So just gently in there and unclip I wish they'd bring back machines with doors on the underside to do this kind of change of a hard disk. So that's the front I've now unclipped. I'm moving down to the side. And indeed, this bit here with those 3 separate screws did need to be undone, and the CD drive, which I took out with the DVD drive, did need to be taken out as well. So that's the front and one side done. Let's move it around to the other side. So there we go, that's now very loose at the front, and it's just the bit of the back now which is held in. I think there's 2 catches here, or 2 tabs. For one on the right here I can do quite easily with just a screwdriver. That's that side done. And in fact, it looks like this one, that one there doesn't actually keep that captive. So it's just that clip there to the right of the battery connector that needs unclipping. And then I just gently put pressure on over this side, and this thing's come away. So now it's just this corner here. I think, let's try using the knife down there. Yeah, there we go. So that is the underside done, and I am glad that I undid this ribbon cable, because indeed it is on the back panel, or the underside panel. If anyone's interested in what this underside panel part number is, it is Dell part number 00MRCR, and the aim here obviously is to replace the hard disk. There are 4 screws holding the hard disk in, so let's undo those. And while we're undoing this, what do we see here? We've got 2 slots for RAM, one of which is populated on this one, so you could actually upgrade the RAM on this here. There's the Wi-Fi card here, CPU here, and its cooling fan. Doesn't look like there's any M2 slot or NGFF storage slot, so you'd have to be using Serial ATA. BIOS battery, speaker connector, and that'll be the touchpad one there. That's about it. Right, so I've undone the 4 screws here for the hard disk and gently lift that up, being aware that the Serial ATA connector is still plugged in. There we go, that's the hard disk is now unplugged. So here's my new hard disk, which is actually going to be an SSD. You will want to, you don't just want to put it in there straight like that, because it won't be held in, it'll rattle around in there. For reliability, that's not going to be a problem really, rattling around, but it's just not great having a laptop that sounds like a child's toy. So you need to transplant this bracket here onto the SSD. So there's another 4 screws on the sides here. A lot of people ask, okay, well great, I've replaced the hard disk or I've put in an SSD, but now my machine doesn't boot. What I've done before I've started this process is I had this machine switched on, and I used a bit of software called Macrium Reflect, which if you're using it for home use is entirely free, and that will clone what's on your hard disk, or one of the hard disks as long as it's not broken or have any bad sectors, onto your new disk. You will need a USB, and in this case I've got USB 3 to Serial ATA adapter. This one is from StarTech and wasn't particularly expensive. Plug that in, plug it into the side of the machine, run Macrium Reflect, click on the clone drive option. It'll copy all of your data from your existing drive to the new one, ready for you to then put into your computer. If you don't want to do that, or you don't want to wait for a USB to Serial ATA device, copy your stuff over onto a memory stick or something, and you can then use on another memory stick if you Google for Windows 10 ISO if you're using Windows, and you can make a Windows 10 install USB stick, just bearing in mind that you will start totally fresh with none of your data, just a blank copy of Windows 10 on your new drive. There we go, that's all those mounting screws in, and that must go that way up, which indeed it does. Can now plug the serial ATA connector back in. There we go. Put the hard disk back down to where it sits. Put the 4 screws back in at the edges of it. Okay, what next? I believe that it's put the underside cover back on. So just put it straight back down and go around the edge, clicking it back into place. That's all that done. Let's open the machine up again, and that, I believe, has gone through the wrong place, so I'm going to fish that back if I can through that hole there, and back into the connector here. So one thing is, this has a line and that needs to be straight. If that line is not fully in there and it's, say, wonky like that, you'll probably find that whatever's connected at the other end of this ribbon cable won't work. So just be, again, aware when you're putting that back in that that lines up quite flat and square with everything, and then push the hinge back down. Now I've got to put the 5 screws back in that were here. Those are easily identified because they've got a little sign which says M2L5 next to them, where each of them go. So that's those 5 screws back in and done up. Keyboard now needs to get plugged back in. So once again, there's a white line going across this. That needs to line up squarely again once you've got this in the connector. And there's also these 2 little blue tabs right at the edge which need to go beyond a little bit of plastic there. So it's almost like a retaining system. So if you've put that in and these little blue tabs are this side of these bits of plastic in the connector, you haven't put the connector in far enough. So it seems like a particularly difficult connector to get this into. There we go. So that's in, and that white line should be flush, and now I push the hinge down to hold it in place, and that hinge gives you quite a good reference as to whether that is straight or not. I actually do want to redo that because it looks almost like it's a little bit too far out on this right hand side. No, maybe not. Right. I'll find out when I turn the machine back on. So the keyboard now needs to go back into its place. So those little tabs slot underneath the palm rest here, and then you just push that down. So everything is back in place and flush where it should be. Close the lid. turn the machine over and put in all the screws from the underside. If this video on how to change the hard disk on a Vostro 3000 series laptop has been helpful to you, it would be really helpful to me if you wouldn't mind subscribing to my YouTube channel. You don't need to have the video notifications switched on, but the subscriber numbers really do help. And the CD drive or DVD drive. Oops. Might help if I put it back in the correct way up. There we go. And then the retaining screw for that. Hopefully we are now done. So battery back in as well. Turn the machine on, bearing in mind it doesn't have a power light there. The power light is at the front of the machine. And hopefully we'll get the Windows startup because I'd cloned the drive using Macrium. If you haven't installed your machine, you'll probably get a BIOS type error message saying a boot device can't be found. But that's looking like we're all good to go on a much faster SSD. There we go. If this video on how to change the hard disk on a Vostro 3000 series laptop has been helpful to you, it would be really helpful to me if you wouldn't mind subscribing to my YouTube channel. You don't need to have the video notifications switched on, but the subscriber numbers really do help. Thank you very much.